This is Jimbo JTech back again with video 8. We are going to look exclusively at effects in this video, something I tell people again and again when they're asking for a music production feedback is spend an entire session just being the effects section of the band, whooshes, crashes, white noise, all these different one-shot effects that we have, all these different things that fill out the sound space. It's one of the most underutilized parts of the musical palette, the musical tool set in these tracks, and it's easily one session that you can spend on your track that's going to make the whole thing take it to the next level. So let's dive right in and have a look. All right, we are back, and this video is going to cover the effects section of this song with some general advice on effects in general. One of the things that I get asked again and again, and I feel like I say this to people on basically a weekly basis, is, you know, the thing that your track needs is a more dedicated effects section. You know, people are always like, what does this need? You know, I've put all of the stuff in my song and it still feels like it needs something. And a lot of the time the answer is you need to spend like a good dedicated session just being the effects section of the band. It's like such an important part of the whole ensemble in dance music, and it's often something that's underserviced. So, you know, the first sort of nugget of wisdom is don't be afraid to sort of like flesh out that effects section and really throw a whole bunch of stuff at the canvas and see what sticks. I usually do this with wave samples, and I generally don't play with them too much, and I don't stress too hard about whether they're the right sounds, because, you know, for me, the essence of what I'm doing, the song's not all about its effects section. It's complemented by the effects section. So wave samples, that being the case, I am going to actually just sort of give you a run through of the effects section of this song from the original version. You'll see everything's in green. You know, this particular project is, I'd say, about 80 to 85% color coded correctly. You know, usually I color code vocals pink. You know, so there's a few things that haven't been categorized yet, but for the most part, you know, I usually color code things by, you know, the same format every single video, every single project. And yeah, so this effects section here is all in green. And usually I can look at the whole song and I can be like, this needs more green, you know? It's sort of, and it's such a standout color, and it's usually the thing that's missing from the song. And so, you know, yeah, I recommend spending an entire section just focusing on the green stuff. And so I'm going to give you a quick play here. Sometimes I actually categorize the crash cymbals as an effect, because it's sort of a one-off sort of, you know, like it's very similar to a one-shot effect in the way that it's used in the song. So sometimes my crash cymbals, instead of being in the drums, are in the effects section instead. So I'm going to give you a quick play, you know, just of the whole song again, just to sort of, so we know where we're at. So the first thing I'll say is don't be afraid to be a bit boring in the arrangement of your effects sounds, you know. The listener doesn't really notice if you're just taking the same sample and making it hit again and again and again throughout the track. So this is just a simple crash cymbal. And, you know, it sidechains a little bit. I think this entire effects section, oh, maybe not, sorry. But you know, sometimes I put a sidechain on the entire effects section, a sidechain compressor. But in this case, it seems to be built into the sound itself, a bit of low end taken out. And yeah, a lot of JTech tracks, you know, during the groove sections literally just have, you know, a crash at the start of every 15-second section. Sometimes I'll get 2 crashes and I'll alternate back and forth between them. So crash 1 will hit and then crash 2 will hit 15 seconds later. And that's just so you're not hearing the same sound again and again. This one's, you know, it slots into the mix pretty nicely. I've got an exhaust sound. This is, you know, once again from this Cashmere sample pack. You know, I love just using just like these samples, you know, set it and forget it kind of samples to do some of the heavy lifting for me. Oops, there we go. So, you know, usually in my songs there's a bit of a white noise blast happening to pronounce the start of new sections. Rises, you don't need to be too fussy about rises. You can definitely use multiple ones. They stack on top of each other pretty nicely usually. the way to think about this is without an effects section, a lot of this stuff is just like loops playing and feeling a bit static. And the effects section sort of acts as the conductor of the orchestra, sort of telling the listener how excited to get and sort of, you know, letting the listener know when things are coming in. I've got an epic riser. Now, nobody who's listening to this song on Spotify is going to specifically notice that that's there, but it's there. However, this riser does get its time in the sun right at the end of the song. It gets given the space to actually be paid direct attention to. Moving on, some echo to the crash. So that just combines with this crash cymbal. Makes it all sort of, you know, echo out into the sound space a bit more. I've got a pluck riser here. This is sort of melodic and it's rising in pitch. And that's bringing a sort of frenetic tension, but it's very subtle. And gives the listener a feeling that this section is headed somewhere. It's giving an anticipation of that something is rising and something is coming. When I'm throwing things at the canvas and seeing what sticks, I also like to use one-off effects that only feature once in the entire song. Lots of neuro bass samples happening in trance songs nowadays. Gonna zoom in on that. Here it just foreshadows some of the quirkiness that sort of comes in this rave section. That's really what it's there for. Pretty subtle, I know. Got some impacts. You can also take drums and put big reverbs on these if you want to craft your own. It's pretty easy to do. Little whooshy noise. And a whole kick, which is pretty ubiquitous in trance music. And you can see it happens at 4 points, all at points where it's sort of, you know, having a bit of an impact in the low end when the kick isn't playing. Let's hear those together coming into the breakdown, combined with those automating synths that were coming up from the Riffs and Plucks video. So that tells the listener that the breakdown has well and truly arrived. The whole kick is used here to build anticipation for the rising snares and rises towards the drop. I'll play from a bit earlier. And it also comes through at this little outro section. And to finish the song. And I'm always sort of making sure to round out the very end of the arrangement with some effects and some kind of nice fade out effects so that the last few seconds really leave the listener with a good taste in their mouth, you know? Some little fills. This one just gets used once. It's pretty subtle stuff, you know? And that's another little fill there, used in a similar way. And so these are just things that sort of fill out the sound space and, you know, make this, you know, few seconds of audio content like no other part of the song. There's another one over here as well. It's just a little fill. And that earlier fill gets used just before the drop as well. Just in that little eye of the storm between the breakdown build up and the drop section. Another sweep up. Just exclusive to this one little part. And it combines with this violin riser I've got down here as well. These are all just samples that I just found and went, oh, that sounds cool, and threw it in. I've got some white noise at the drop, always, in every song. I also have a crowd. Now with these crowd samples, what you want to do if you're playing in like an arena is you want to give everyone enough of an impression that everybody's losing their minds and cheering, but you don't want to overdo it to the point where you're sort of forcing the listener to feel like they're supposed to go crazy. So it's subtle. If this crowd effect is too loud, it's like you're putting a rent-a-crowd in your song and, you know, it sounds a bit cheesy and tacky. But if it's buried in the mix with all of this white noise and all of these crashes and stuff, it just creates this sense of like, yeah, at the drop that people don't even know is there, or people don't specifically identify is there. So it's all about building this anticipation. And then the last thing, I've got my trusty 2019 snares, and they're just doubling up in frequency here. So all of these effects combined with punching a little bit of a hole in the arrangement for those last 4 beats before the drop, which gives everything a chance to just breathe for a second before it punches the listener in the face with the drop section, combined with the impact of all of these sounds, is what really brings, you know, these sections home. It's like you not only have to craft good sections of interesting content, but you also need to introduce them in an impactful way and let the listener know what might be coming next and get them excited about what might be coming next. So that's basically it for the effects section of this song. In the next video, we'll be looking at atmospherics, so stay tuned for that.